Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This is Dal Gurunga, and you're listening to From a Place of Self, a podcast designed to help you create a little space in your day to connect back to your core authentic sense of self and lead from that place, live from that place, love from that place. So often we are leading, living, loving, making decisions, responding, reacting to life from triggered parts of ourselves that we're not even aware of. And we say things like, I'm so angry, I'm so upset, I'm so sad, I'm so disappointed, I'm so frustrated, I'm so stuck, I'm just stuck. I hate you. Whatever it might be, a feeling towards another person. I'm mad at you. I'm angry at you. I'm upset with you. I'm disappointed with you. Without recognizing, and when we use language like that, unconsciously and unintentionally, we're blending our complete sense of self with just that one part of us that may be feeling that at that time. And we know there are different parts within ourselves because we're often a bundling ball of contradictions where we think different things at the same time. I love him, but I also hate his guts. I really want justice and vengeance, but I also see their side and realize they weren't really that bad. We see this a lot. I see this a lot with people that I work with and even in my own life. When we talk about our upbringing, and we get into this space of recognizing neglect or abuse or mistreatment from our parents. And then there comes this wave of justification from another part of ourselves that doesn't want our parents to be labeled so bad. Well, they weren't really that bad. And I really want to make sure that I'm not painting my parents in a negative light because they were good people and they did try really hard. And all of that is true, but it indicates that there is a multiplicity of parts within all of us that have different feelings, different emotions, different opinions, different ideas, different reactions to things. And sometimes certain parts of ourselves get really strong and they take over. In internal family systems world, we call it, we blend completely with that part. And we'll say things like, I am so angry. I am so upset. I hate you. I am disappointed with you. I am feeling defensive from what you just said. And when we do that, we are blending completely with a part of ourselves and we are unconsciously removing access or blocking ourselves from the deeper sense of us that is separate from the part that is feeling that particular emotion. So in the IFS world, we learn to say things like, rather than, I am so angry at you for being late, for making a bad joke, for insulting me, we learn to say things like, when you said that, or when that happened or didn't happen, a part of me got extremely triggered and became very angry because another part of me or that part felt that you don't love me or felt that I was unworthy because when you were late, part of me felt disrespected and like I wasn't worthy of your time. And therefore part of me kicked in and was responsive through anger or through lashing out or through sarcasm. And just that itself allows us to create a little bit of space because when we're in our self energy, we have context. Perspective is a quality of self. There are 5 P's of qualities of self. There are unlimited qualities of self, but Dr. Richard Schwartz and the IFS Institute lay out 8 C's, 8 qualities that begin with the letter C, which we've discussed before, and 5 P's. See if I can get all of them. Playfulness, perspective, presence, patience, and persistence. So it's interesting that some of those qualities seem almost semi-contradictory. Patience and persistence, meaning patience that there's no agenda. There's no sense that things need to be done in a certain time. It isn't so much of the stress that we experience in our life because we feel that we're not operating to some, if we really think about it, arbitrary sense of timeline, right? I haven't done X, Y, and Z yet in my life, or things aren't moving fast enough, or I'm not married yet, or I don't have kids yet, or my kids haven't done X, Y, or Z yet, or I haven't made it this far in my career yet, or whatever it might be. I'm not far enough along in my healing journey. That's a big one. I spent many years in ACOA and Al Anon, which are 12-step programs for codependency and emotional sobriety. And very, very common for most of us in the space, we would think, gosh, I wish I came here sooner. And there's a positive aspect to that of always wanting to feel like we could be further ahead than we are, or wishing we knew something sooner. But there was also this element of it that would just come with regret and shame and self-criticism that, oh, I'm so far behind, or I should have done something sooner. Because there's parts of us that feel that things need to be moving at a certain pace, probably because they're worried that if it doesn't, it's never going to happen. Whereas self, a quality of self, is also confidence, and a calmness and a connectedness has patience. But there's also persistence, meaning that it doesn't get discouraged to the point of giving up when there's an obstacle. And it doesn't mean that when we're in self-energy, when we start to heal parts of ourselves, that life becomes easy. It doesn't mean that we don't get upset, that we don't get disappointed, that we don't get frustrated. But it means when those parts of us come up, because we've learned the language and we've learned to tend to them, and we spent time working with them and building relationships, self-part relationship, self-to-part relationship, myself to those parts of me, when they come up, I can dialogue, and I can start to speak for them rather than them speaking for me. So that's the language of being able to, whether it's your intimate partner, even at work, even in your casual relationships, anywhere, being able to use that kind of language. And Dick Schwartz, the founder of the IFS model, he calls these aspects of ourselves parts, because that's just how we speak. That's how his clients would speak. That's how we often speak. There's a part of me that really isn't sure if that's a good idea. There's a part of me that really just wants to go for it. There's a part of me that is feeling really sad right now. We speak like that in our regular vernacular anyways. And so, but whether you refer to it as your parts, sometimes I'll say aspects of me, or whatever language feels right for you, to be able to distinguish yourself from the emotion itself and be able to communicate from that way naturally creates space for self-energy to be more present. And when that self-energy is more present, all of these qualities come forth. One of which is perspective. The P word of the 5 Ps for this session right now is perspective. And when we are in conflict, one of my teachers said that when we're in conflict, we lose all context. We lose all perspective. We lose the bigger picture. And it all becomes about the right here and the right now. And what happens is the parts of ourselves carrying extreme beliefs and emotions take over, and they kick everyone else out of the driver's seat, and they hold the wheel. And then we make decisions from that place. We say things from that place. We add on to the narratives in that space. And it's not that we want to just make those parts go away or tell them that they're wrong, but they don't belong in the driver's seat. And oftentimes the therapeutic approach or coaching method or self-development movement tries to put those parts of ourselves into a straitjacket. How can you curb your anger? How can you be less lazy and force ourselves to take sides in the polarizations within us? The part of you that wants to stay in bed and the part of you that wants to get up and go to the gym or get going with work or whatever. And we take sides. And sometimes we need to just kick ourselves into gear. There's a place for that. But we have to go back and acknowledge the part of ourselves that was on the other side of the equation, that felt angry, that felt disappointed, that felt like it needed a break. And if we don't address that, it just comes back with a vengeance. And we live with this continuous state of inner tension and disharmony and fragility. It's a fragile system. As opposed to being able to tend to those parts to understand why they felt angry in the first place. Because usually it's less to do with the immediate circumstance and more to do with something in the past. That's the definition of trauma. Trauma is not what happens to us. It's the perpetuation of the experience by thinking that it's still happening today. We talk about big T trauma and little T trauma. I think that the little T trauma movement, in a sense, I think it's very helpful. The holistic psychologist in her book, How to Do the Work, talks about this idea. Gabby Bernstein in her book, Happy Days and Other Works, all people that I'm a fan of, books I recommend, all talk about this idea of big T trauma and now little T trauma. Because we used to think trauma used to mean that I had to have some serious transgression of abuse or lived through a war or gotten a major car accident to qualify as trauma. But trauma can be what we might judge as small things because it's not the thing itself, it's how we react to it. You might have something that externally, quote unquote, qualifies as small, but internally you could have felt the same sense of abandonment. You could have adopted the same sense of unworthiness. You could have felt the same sense of not being safe. And if there wasn't a processing and releasing and letting go of that, it stores itself in the body, both the gross physical body and the subtle body of the consciousness and the mind. And then we think it's still happening today. So there's some event that happened previously in our life that terrified us, that led to a feeling or a belief of shame or guilt or pain or rejection or abandonment. And then we hear a sound or we see something or somebody speaks to us in a certain tone, and it triggers those parts of us to think that that same thing is happening right now. And we just click into gear and respond to the perceived danger. And that's why we get things like, geez, all I said was, geez, all I did was, and then we get defensive or the other person gets defensive because we're not responding to what's happening right here, right now. I'm responding. There's a 2-year-old part of me. There's a 6-year-old part of me. There's an 18-year-old part of me that's still stuck in the past, thinking that they are reliving and re-experiencing perpetually that abuse, that abandonment, that rejection, that fear, that whatever it may be, fill in the blank. So when we're in conflict and we allow those parts of ourselves to fully overwhelm and blend, we lose perspective. We lose context. So when we start to speak for those parts rather than have those parts speak for us as if they are us in totality, then we can create a little bit of space for our real self to emerge. And when that real self emerges, our parts can soften back. And in the moment, we can de-escalate a situation. And then the real work of going back to those parts, often with the help of an experienced guide or facilitator or IFS coach or practitioner, whatever it may be, or it could just be in your own journaling. You know, the whole Nicole LePera, the holistic psychologist, her book, How to Do the Work, is a great resource of how to do these things on your own, because we may not be able to find a great therapist, or it can be costly, or whatever it may be that prevents us from being able to connect with another person and do this work, which can be, it is imperative to be able to find somebody to guide you on your healing journey. We don't do it alone. Even in 12-step programs, you need the fellowship of meetings. You need a sponsor, right? There is no self-made men or women in the self-healing journey. At the same time, there are things that we can do and need to do for ourselves. Our meditation practices, our prayer practices, our time in nature, our journaling, whatever it might be, meaningful time with ourselves and our parts. I've started to do this in the morning. I've developed this habit of waking up earlier than I would like to, usually because I need to go to the bathroom. And then I go back to bed and I can't quite go back to sleep. And I have this question of, should I just get up? And I know that if I get up, that's great. I'm up earlier and I can get stuff done and have my self-care routine, whatever it might be. But I know I'm going to crash later because I'm too tired, because I didn't get proper sleep. I just turned 40. I've reached the age in my life where I need enough sleep. 8 hours. I need it. I spent 10 plus years of my life getting 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep, living in an ashram, and I got through it for a period of time. Now I can figure myself getting older and I need sleep. So I'm in this sense where if I don't get enough sleep, I crash. So I'm in this space of I can get up, but then I'm going to crash later. So let me try go back to sleep. And then you spend an hour not sleeping, but also not getting up because you're trying to figure out what to do and trying to rest. I've started to use some of that time just to connect with my parts because I got nothing else going on. It's quiet. The dogs are still sleeping. and I just connect what's going on internally. And I just use that space. And if I fall back to sleep, cool, I get some more rest. If I don't, it doesn't have to be getting up and journaling or being in meditation. It could just be laying in bed and seeing what comes up and allowing yourself to have some meaningful time with your parts, the parts of you that are normally running your life during the day that you can start to just give attention to. And it just builds a habit of going inside and creating some self-awareness. That's all. It can look different for all of us, but we need to be able to change the language we use and how we speak about what's going on in my inner world, speaking for parts rather than letting them speak as us, being able to have our own personal routine, whatever that looks like, journaling, meditation, thought, spending time in nature, listening to podcasts or other resources like these to be able to connect us back to ourselves, and engaging in conversation, or working with our own therapists or coaches or practitioners or community platforms, whatever it looks like. And when we do that, all those heavy reactive parts can soften back and start to be in a healthy relationship internally. And that naturally, inevitably transforms and changes our relationships externally in the world around us. So I hope this is a helpful reminder for you as much as it is for me. I'm working on all of this right there with you. I love you. I'm grateful for you. And I'm wishing you and all of your parts the best day possible, whatever that means for you. Please be in touch. Feel free to stay connected. Wishing you all the best. Bye-bye.